You've heard his name many times, Aristotle. But do you really know him? He wasn't just a philosopher. He laid the foundations of science and logic, tried to understand human nature, and shaped the way the world thinks for more than 2,000 years. Some called him just Plato's student, but Aristotle became a school of thought himself. In this video, we'll show you 10 fascinating facts about Aristotle that very few people know. If you're ready, let's begin. Fact 1. He was a student of Plato, but he didn't think like him. Aristotle came to Athens when he was just 17 years old and entered Plato's academy. He studied, listened, and learned there under Plato's guidance for 20 years, almost a lifetime. But Aristotle wasn't a student who merely repeated his teacher's words. Plato believed that this world is just a shadow, that true reality exists in the realm of ideas. To him, the physical world was ever-changing, unreliable, and only a reflection of the truth. But Aristotle challenged this view. He said, "Truth is right in front of our eyes. The world around us is real, and we can understand it through observation and reason." This marked a major turning point in the history of philosophy. Aristotle prioritized experience, real-world observation, and rational thought. He introduced the idea of learning from life rather than only learning from books. While Plato guided him as a mental idealist, Aristotle became the philosopher with his feet firmly on the ground. Fact 2. He was the teacher of Alexander. He wasn't just a philosopher, he was the man who taught wisdom, thought, and patience to a young man who would later conquer all of Asia. That young man's name, Alexander the Great, the invincible commander of history. Alexander of Macedonia, a figure whose name made entire continents tremble. It was this young man's education that was guided not by a king, but by a philosopher, Aristotle. The king of Macedonia, Philip II, wanted to raise his son not only with sword and battle, but also with thought and wisdom. Therefore, he called upon the greatest mind of the era, Aristotle, to be Alexander's teacher. Aristotle taught him not just to read, but to think critically, ask questions, and challenge beliefs without understanding. It is said that Alexander later wrote in his diaries, "My father gave me life, but my teacher Aristotle taught me how to live." This was not merely a teacher-student relationship. It was a meeting of two powerful minds that changed the world. One taught intelligence, the other put it into action. Fact 3. He invented logic. Today we hear the word logic so often that it feels like it has always existed. But once upon a time, people just thought. Aristotle created the rules of thinking. Before him, people argued without any rules. Who is right? Who is wrong? There was no way to prove it. Until Aristotle appeared. He said, if every human is mortal, and Socrates is a human, then Socrates is mortal. It sounds simple, but this is the foundation of formal logic. This sentence changed the structure of thought for thousands of years. Aristotle turned arguing into an art and thinking into a mechanism with these systems. His works, called Organon, remain a roadmap for philosophers, lawyers, scientists, and programmers to this day. Without the logical system he created, neither the scientific method, nor legal arguments, nor computer codes could function as they do now. Fact 4. He was the first to classify living beings systematically. Once upon a time, the world was simply divided into humans, animals, and plants. But Aristotle sought order within this chaos. He was not just a philosopher, he was one of the first biologists. Imagine, in a time when microscopes didn't even exist, Aristotle dissected sea creatures with his own hands to study their internal structures. He began grouping living beings based on their form, lifestyle, movement ability, and feeding habits. Those living in water, those flying in the air, those bound to the land, egg layers, live bearers. Everything for him was part of a system, and this system was the language of nature. No one had done anything like this before. It is said that during his research in Syracuse, his writings on fish eye structure and reproduction processes are still scientifically accurate today. If biology classes today have categories like mammals, amphibians, and birds, it is thanks to Aristotle's pioneering steps. Fact 5. His ethics is the philosophy of the golden mean. Many people think of ethics as simply good or bad, but Aristotle did not see it that way. He said, Virtue lies between excess and deficiency. True strength is found there. This philosophy is called the golden mean. For example, courage was not just not being afraid for him. If you are too fearful, that is a flaw. If you take reckless risks without thinking, that is foolishness. But between the two, if you recognize fear yet still do what is right, that is courage. Another example, generosity. If you give excessively, that is wastefulness. If you share nothing at all, that is stinginess. But in the middle, sharing with those in need while not forgetting yourself, that is virtue. According to Aristotle, ethics was not a book of rules. Ethics was about being honest and balanced with yourself. He said, "To be a good person, wisdom alone is not enough. You must understand your feelings and cultivate yourself." This philosophy was based not on extreme religion or strict laws, but on inner human values. It was as if he said, "Ethics is not written for you. You must find it in your own life." That's why this idea is a thought that has lived on in both East and West, in ancient times and today. Aristotle saw ethics not as judgment, but as an inner balance. No matter how learned you are, if you don't know yourself, you cannot be virtuous. Fact 6. He valued practical wisdom. Aristotle did not seek philosophy only within the pages of books. For him, wisdom was not just about gathering knowledge, it was about putting it into practice. He said, "True wisdom is not just knowing, but acting on that knowledge." This was an important principle for him. No matter how strong a person's intellect or memory is, true value shows in their decisions and daily behavior. Aristotle described practical wisdom like this: "All ideas written in books remain empty if you don't put them into action." This idea was reflected in his work in politics, ethics, and natural sciences. He engaged in philosophy not just for debate, but to improve human life. For example, in his work Nicomachean Ethics, there is a call not only to talk about moral principles, but to apply them in life. At the same time, Aristotle sought practicality in the governance of city-states. According to him, the best laws and forms of government are those suited to people's everyday lives. For Aristotle, knowledge was not only power, but also responsibility. Learning is not enough. You must apply what you have learned. This is one of the core messages of his philosophy. Fact 7. The Earth was once considered the center of the universe. Aristotle was both a great philosopher and a scientist, but like all humans, his thinking had natural limitations. At that time, people knew very little about the universe. Based on what they could see with the naked eye, Aristotle and his peers believed that the Earth was the center of everything. This belief was called the geocentric model, meaning the Earth stood at the exact center of the universe, while the sun, moon, and stars revolved around it. It was, in a way, a reflection of humanity's desire to see itself as the most important being in existence. Aristotle's ideas were so strong and convincing that this belief remained dominant for centuries. People believed the Earth was unshakable, stable, and at the heart of all things. In science, this idea even reached the level of dogma, but history showed that the truth was far more complex. In the late 15th century, Nicholas Copernicus proposed a revolutionary idea: that the sun was at the center of the universe and the Earth revolved around it. This idea turned the scientific world upside down and overthrew Aristotle's model. For scholars of Aristotle's time, observing and understanding the movement of celestial bodies was extremely difficult. The stars and planets moved unpredictably in the sky, and their reasons were unclear. The Earth, on the other hand, felt solid, touchable, and real, which is why it was assumed to be the center. In addition, religious and philosophical beliefs of the time helped preserve this model. People wanted to believe that humanity was at the center of everything. This mistake, in fact, became a crucial part of scientific progress. Because Aristotle was such a respected figure, his theories were accepted for centuries, and other scientists found it difficult to challenge them. But the beauty of science lies in this: we learn through mistakes, we question old ideas, and we seek new ones. Aristotle showed us that even the greatest thinkers do not have the final word. We must always search, ask, and evolve our thinking. Science itself is a constantly changing, growing, and refining journey. And Aristotle will forever be remembered as one of the early guides on that path. Fact 8. He wrote over 200 works. Aristotle worked with incredible productivity throughout his life. He wrote over 200 works covering a wide range of topics: philosophy, logic, biology, ethics, politics, poetics, physics, and more. Sadly, most of these works have been lost, destroyed, or disappeared over time. Today, we only have a portion, mostly notes and summaries written by his students. Even so, these surviving texts became the foundation of Western science for centuries. His writings were not just full of theory, they were based on observation and research. For example, his studies on animal anatomy are still seen as the starting point of biological science. His book Poetics remains one of the key works in literary theory, exploring the structure of drama and storytelling. Aristotle's works were used as textbooks in many European universities, translated by Islamic scholars, and helped shape scientific thinking. He didn't just influence how we think, he left behind a treasure of knowledge that is still read, studied, and valued today. Fact 9. He said humans are social beings by nature. Aristotle believed that humans were not made to live alone. By nature, we are social beings, born with the instinct to live together, communicate, and share thoughts and emotions. Living in isolation, staying silent, cutting oneself off from the world. These, he said, go against the human spirit. To him, this wasn't just a social fact, but a truth about our very existence. True happiness, what he called the good life, could only happen within a community. He believed human life begins with the family, grows in the village, and reaches full form in the city-state. Only through society can a person truly become complete. He even wrote, if someone lives outside society and has no need for others, he must be either a god or a beast. For ordinary humans, loneliness leads not to growth, but to destruction. Aristotle also said that our reason and speech exist because of this social nature. Through language, we express thoughts, define justice, create laws, and build communities. Without people living together, there would be no morality, no justice, no laws, and no state. Fact 10. His legacy is everywhere today. Aristotle died at the age of 62 in 322 BC. By then, he had been exiled from Athens. Not everyone welcomed a thinker who challenged even Plato's ideas. When Athens wanted to condemn him, he reportedly said, I won't let the Athenians commit a second crime against philosophy. The first was the death of Socrates. He died in the city of Chalcis, his mother's hometown. But his death wasn't the end. His ideas lived on and shaped the world. Today, whenever we study logic, use scientific methods, talk about ethics, justice, or politics, or simply have a thoughtful conversation with a friend, Aristotle's influence is there. His works are still taught in universities, explored by philosophers, used by scientists and leaders. His thoughts help us ask deeper questions about life. Aristotle wasn't always right. He misunderstood the sky, but he understood the power of reason. He's remembered as a master of philosophy, but his ideas go far beyond, into every corner of human thought. To learn so much about logic, ethics, science, politics, and humanity from one man, maybe that's his greatest miracle. If you're someone who thinks, questions, and learns, leave a like, subscribe, and tell us in the comments. What do you think was Aristotle's greatest idea?